Welcome to another episode of Inside the Thin Blue Line. I'm Dave Rattigan with Dale Lawrence, and joining us, retired police officer Dale Lawrence, and joining us, we always look forward to him whenever he comes by, whenever he rolls out of bed on time for our afternoon taping, Nathan Arroyo.
Dave, you want to know the only time Nathan really comes out is when we let him know like what the agenda is, and if it's a little bit disturbing or a lot disturbing, he seems to get all jacked up. He loves that stuff.
Yeah, he is. Well, he's in
non-serious stuff he likes.
He likes non-serious stuff?
Well, this is serious, but it's also dementedly serious.
I'm about to read about a murder, and you're saying non-serious stuff. This is certainly, anyway, this episode called Cold Cases, Moped Chases, and Witch Hunts. But first, we've got this story from the news. Benjamin Elliott said he was sleeping when he stabbed his twin sister multiple times in the middle of the night. This is a court case going on in Texas, and 17-year-old Benjamin Elliott told police that he woke up between 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning in his sister's room and saw the blade still sticking into her neck. She was dead. And
he did do CPR, though, because he's a nice brother.
Yeah. Well, you guys are sick. You guys are sick.
Little CPR.
Anyway, the arrest was made. I guess my question for this is: does this defense?
No, I was looking this crime up or this excuse up in regards to people say they were sleepwalking, and there's a lot of cases probably in the last 100 years with one of the first times it was ever tried was Massachusetts versus Terrell in 1846. A guy named Albert Terrell was acquitted of murdering a prostitute in Boston, almost cut her head off, burnt down the brothel that she was at, and he came up. He was the first guy to ever do it. I was sleepwalking. And the jury bought it, and the guy was let free.
He was let free?
Absolutely. He was the first guy to try it. Now, 1846.
Is this 1846 because of a power differential? Is that why he...
were they stupider in 1846?
Yes.
Probably. What do you think, Nate?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and we've only gotten stupider.
That's true.
Well, wait a minute. Now, let me ask you this question. Certainly, we've gotten stupider. But, I mean, could this happen?
I read up a lot on it, and there are doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists who would be willing to go up there and testify that, yes, this is an actual condition where people have actually been asleep and they either got into a car and drove down the street and killed someone, or they sexually assaulted someone, or they, choked their wife or their significant other to death, and they used the excuse of they were sleepwalking. And it's a condition. It's brought on by trauma in many instances. And there were people who testified and said, yeah, that's an actual condition. However, luckily for us common folk out there who like to be safe, it's extremely rare that a jury is going to buy that excuse. But they have in the past. So you're saying that some instances where they believed it.
The mental health professionals say this is a real condition. It could actually happen without offering any other explanation for the behavior. But we're supposed to say the jury says no, because why? Because they're not going to believe the scientists.
Not going to believe it. I mean, I guess if that's the case, you can commit any crime, and all you have to say is I was sleepwalking. I mean, come on. I mean, like I said, Nathan believes we're getting stupider. I believe that, but I don't think we're to the point where we're that fucking stupid.
I believe that right now Nathan's looking and thinking, it's another excuse I can't use.
Now, you have a sister, don't you, Nathan?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah?
Yeah, I was having a wonderful dream the other night where I was cutting a birthday cake. And I woke up, I had sawn her arm off.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it happens, Dave. It happens.
That's quite an image. Is that like when you had the dream that you were baptizing somebody in the water, and it turned out it was just a pillow you were putting it over the face of? Anyway, moving on.
I think luckily this happened in Texas, and I think people in Texas, they don't buy that.
Right.
Texas are just good old country folk, and they don't believe that bullshit.
But isn't that more about attitude than it's about actually finding the facts? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's one of, you know what it's like? It's like amnesia. You grow up, you watch TV, I watch TV.
Yep.
Somebody gets conked in the head, they've got amnesia, they can't remember who they are.
I can think of one case that happened in the community that I live, or I should say the community that I used to work. We had an individual who came into the back of the station one night. We left the door open, which wasn't good. He came into the back of the station, and he walked up to a police officer who was at the water bubbler, and he said, "I don't know what happened, but I just killed my wife." He choked her to death.
Yeah.
But he doesn't remember anything other than that, "Hey, could you go to my house because I think my wife's dead."
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever had that dream where you're waking up, you're in a fight, you're having a dream, you're in a fight, and then you wake up and you've just punched the person next to you?
Oh, yeah. I wake up once in a while and I'll throw a kick and I'll kick my bureau or I'll kick something. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can happen, but
well,
obviously
I mean,
you're saying not to the extent.
I wouldn't want to live next to the guy who got off choking his wife to death and he got off on the sleepwalking.
Sleepwalking, you never know.
I wouldn't want him to be my neighbor.
I know.
Yeah, he might sleepwalk again into my house.
That's you notice this, Nathan, when he says the word individual,
Yeah.
he sounds just like a cop, doesn't he?
I mean, he was.
Yeah, I know. But there's a certain way they have where they say it. They say it as there is a certain way, individual. Every syllable is pronounced. As opposed to you or me, who would say a guy.
Individual.
Oh, maybe not you. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to cold cases.
Cold cases, Dave.
This is actually, I don't know, is this good news or bad news? The 30-year cold case, a woman named Patricia Moreno in Malden.
Malden, Massachusetts.
Yep, I'm sorry, Malden, Massachusetts, 91. She was 17, and she was killed, and fast forward 30 years.
30 years later, some guy by the name of Rodney Daniels, who was on scene 30 years earlier.
Yep, who would have been 18 at the time. He's
18 years old. He was arrested. He was arrested for her murder. And I think looking at it, maybe from your perspective, Dave, you're like, wow, hey, Malden Police Department, that's a crack department. They solved this case. What's that?
Glass half full.
They solved this case 30 years after the fact, and this guy, is going to, whatever's going to happen during a trial, but more likely than not, he'll probably be convicted, and the young lady's family has some closure. But the way I look at it, just reading the case, it wasn't a DNA case, meaning it wasn't as though there was some DNA, and then 30 years later, the suspect's DNA was entered into the system, and they found it that way. That's a great case. That's a great way to solve a case. But this case was solved if what they're reporting is factual, that a witness came about 30 years later. It was more described that the witness was out of the country, and then at some point the witness came back. They interviewed the witness, and the witness said, "Hey, yeah, the night that happened, I saw a person up, on the porch." I think it was like a 2 or 3 family house in Malden, Massachusetts. The young girl was a foster child, and she was there with the foster mother and a couple of other foster kids, and then this kid who was Rodney, who was arrested. They were all there. There was a gunshot. Cop showed up. Family all wakes up, and the girl's dead. And lo and behold, no one knew who did it. Now, in my opinion, the responding officers, whoever that was, Malden Police, Boston Police, State Police, looks like to me that they fucked up from the very beginning. Because the kid was there. There was information that the kid had harassed this girl in the past. This kid had some sort of a criminal record. All they really had to do was I don't know if they brought everyone from the scene to the station and interviewed them individually. I think they would have. They probably should have done a gunpowder residue test on everyone just to see if someone had shot a weapon. If they had done that, they probably would have found something on Rodney. This wasn't like a girl walking down the street at 2 a.m. and she's just walking alone and someone randomly shoots her. If that happens, then you're right. You might never solve that because there's thousands of potential suspects out there at 2 a.m. just driving by. But this There's like 4 or 5 people at the house. They're on a porch. There's a second, third story going on here. I mean, how random was this?
Let me suggest this.
Yes, go ahead.
This is from the story. The victim's foster mother, 2 teenage daughters, and her daughter's boyfriend were also in the apartment.
Yeah.
So let's say this. Let's say if the boyfriend did it, boyfriend does it, somebody hides the boyfriend, cops come by, oh, he's not even here, blah, blah, blah. I mean,
we had a very similar case in my community. A couple of kids were playing with a gun.
Yep.
Gun was loaded. Kid got shot. Kid died. They went to the house. All right. It was a house for domestic violence victims. So none of them were cooperative. They lied right to the cop's face. They denied seeing anything. They denied anyone being there.
Victims of domestic violence are going to lie to the cops about somebody being there because why?
They don't want to help the cops. Yeah, so I can see maybe they said that Rodney wasn't there.
Okay.
But I believe just reading the article, they said Rodney was there.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, so it says Rodney was there. So I just think it's really shitty police work from the outset. And 30 years later, you had a motivated cop or a motivated state trooper or a motivated district attorney who looked at the case and said, whoa, this is an easy one. This is an easy one to solve. We did a shitty job 30 years ago, but let's correct our bad investigatory practices and let's unscrew this case and let's get some justice for this girl. It was bad from the outset.
I just got to just 1 second, Nathan.
Yeah.
Investigatory practices. Did you hear it?
Investigatory.
Equal. Every syllable is pronounced distinctly, separately, with the same emphasis. I'm just pointing it out to you.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, back to this. Yeah, something about this case seems like, and again, you go back 30 years. I mean, I can't remember what happened last week.
Yeah.
So you've got testimony from 30 years ago. You've got reports written by,
unmotivated police officers.
Well, maybe they were motivated. Maybe
I don't think they were.
Maybe they couldn't get cooperation. Maybe this happened. Maybe that happened. We don't know. We weren't there. I know you're a lot more critical than I am.
Well, because I know police officers.
Okay.
And regardless of whether it's a murder, a sexual assault, or someone just broke into your car and stole your cell phone, Dave, I know cops who, don't give a shit and just very nonchalantly just do the case, regardless of what it is. And I also know cops, and I think whoever the cop was or group of cops or state troopers that solved this one, they're highly motivated. Okay. They're just people that like to solve crimes. And I know cops like that.
Yeah.
I know there are cops in my department currently right now in the North Shore
really
who love doing that stuff and looked at that case and said, I can solve that case. And they went out and they solved it.
See, when you said that, you said, I know motivated cops. I looked over at Nathan and he's saying, on TV.
Just like motivated comedians, Dave, and unmotivated comedians.
That's true. Well, here's the other thing. I think there are a couple things about this case that strike me as odd. This was and this is written in cop speak, interviewed one witness, well, maybe not cop speak, but law speak, legal speak, who had been out of the U.S. for an extended period.
You trying to tell me you couldn't track that person down?
No, I know. I get it.
You're kidding me. To me, that is, I've known investigations that have gone outside of the state, that have gone to the Dominican Republic, that have gone to Puerto Rico, all right?
Brag it.
To look for suspects or interview, people who might be involved, but witnesses.
It's just such a...
Where did they go in this world that they couldn't get to him for 30 years?
Well, I get that. I also understand that people sometimes don't want to be found.
That's
for
true.
whatever reason, and it can be tough to find those people.
I'd let once this case, whether it goes to trial or once more information is released, maybe we can revisit it. But my gut instinct...
Yep.
Couple of motivated cops looked at this case and said, let's go get it. We got this. We can do this.
Here's something else. You always think about DNA. When we think about cold cases, there's always DNA. The DNA always proves the case. How often is a cold case solved by DNA evidence?
Well, that's a good one. You mean in regards to just the DNA solving?